I had been looking forward to my trip for weeks. I was driving to visit my childhood friend, Mark, who had recently moved to a cabin in the woods. The drive was long, but I didn't mind. I enjoyed the solitude and the chance to clear my mind. The sun was setting as I left the city, casting long shadows over the winding road. The first couple of hours were uneventful. I listened to my favorite podcast, and so far the ride was really chill. It was when I turned onto the narrow, forested highway that I noticed the car behind me. It was an old, beat-up sedan, its headlights piercing through the gathering darkness. At first, I thought nothing of it. After all, this was the only road leading to Mark's place. But as the miles passed, the sedan remained at a constant distance behind me, never attempting to pass. My unease grew. I switched lanes, but the car did the same. I slowed down, hoping it would go around me, but it matched my speed. I sped up, and it kept pace. My heart began to pound in my chest. The road became more isolated, with dense trees closing in on both sides. The glow of my headlights barely cut through the thick darkness. I glanced in my rearview mirror and saw the car's headlights still there. My hands tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles white. I tried to call Mark, but there was no signal. I started to panic. I didn't want to stop, but I also didn't know what else to do. I kept driving, hoping to reach Mark's cabin soon. Suddenly, the road ahead forked, and I took the left turn, hoping to lose the car behind me. I glanced back and saw the sedan hesitate for a moment before following me. My heart sank. They were definitely following me. I spotted a small gas station up ahead, its neon sign flickering in the darkness. I pulled in, hoping the presence of other people would deter whoever was following me. I parked near the entrance and hurried inside. My heart was racing. The gas station was empty except for the clerk, a tired-looking man who barely glanced up as I entered. I quickly explained my situation, but he seemed uninterested. I peered out the window and saw the sedan parked at the far end of the lot, its driver still inside, watching. I felt trapped. I couldn't stay here forever, but I didn't want to lead the car to Mark's cabin. With no other options, I decided to confront the driver. I took a deep breath and stepped outside, walking toward the sedan. The driver's window rolled down slowly, revealing a man with a blank expression. I tried to ask him why is he following him, but he wouldn't answer. He just stared at me with cold, empty eyes. I felt a chill run down my spine. I turned and hurried back to my car, locking the doors behind me. I didn't know what else to do but drive. I pulled out of the gas station and back onto the road. The sedan followed me. The road became narrower, the trees thicker. I could barely see the road ahead. My headlights caught something in the distance. It was Mark's cabin. Relief washed over me as I sped up, hoping to reach safety. I pulled into Mark's driveway and jumped out of the car, banging on the door. Mark opened it, looking confused and concerned. I turned to point at the sedan, but it was gone. The road was empty. My heart pounded as I tried to explain what had happened, but it sounded crazy even to me. Mark let me in, and we locked the doors. I spent the night glancing out the window, but the car never returned. The next morning, I found no trace of it. I had been planning my trip to the lake for months. I needed a break from the stress of work and life in general. The idea of spending a few days by the calm water, fishing and relaxing, sounded like paradise. I packed my car and set off in the late afternoon, hoping to reach the lake by nightfall. The drive was long, but I enjoyed the changing scenery as I left the city behind. The sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. As the darkness grew, the road became more isolated, surrounded by dense forests. The GPS told me I was still about an hour away from the lake. As I stood there, taking in the peaceful surroundings, I heard a faint voice calling my name. At first, I thought I was imagining things, but then I heard it again, louder and more insistent. My heart started to race. I looked around, but I couldn't see anyone. The voice seemed to come from the woods, hidden in the darkness. A shiver ran down my spine. Who could possibly know my name out here? I got back into my car and locked the doors. I didn't want to stick around to find out what was going on. I started the engine and turned back onto the road. As I drove, the voice continued to echo in my mind. I turned up the radio, hoping to drown it out. But no matter how loud the music played, I could still hear it. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. The road seemed to stretch on forever, the trees on either side pressing in closer. The darkness outside the car felt alive, like it was watching me, waiting for the right moment to strike. My mind raced with thoughts of what could be out there, following me, calling my name. Then, I saw a figure standing in the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a halt. The figure didn't move. It was tall and shadowy, its features obscured by the darkness. But I could feel its eyes on me, cold and unblinking. I was frozen with fear, unable to move. The figure began to slowly walk toward the car, its movements unnaturally smooth. I fumbled with the gear shift, trying to reverse, but my hands were trembling too much. The figure reached the car, and I could see its face now. It was pale and twisted, with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce right through me. I finally managed to throw the car into reverse and hit the gas. I didn't stop until I reached the lake, my heart pounding in my chest. I parked near the edge of the water, the moonlight casting an eerie glow over the still surface. I got out of the car, my legs were shaking, and I looked around. There was no sign of the figure, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I spent the night in the car, too afraid to set up camp. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent my heart racing. I kept expecting the figure to reappear, its hollow eyes watching me from the shadows. But the night passed without incident, and as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, I finally felt a sense of relief. My younger brother, Sam, and I were on our way to visit our grandparents. They lived in a small town far from the city, and the drive was long and mostly through deserted highways. As we drove, the highway became more isolated, with only the occasional car passing by. Sam was asleep in the passenger seat, his head leaning against the window. I kept my eyes on the road. About an hour into the drive, I noticed headlights in the rearview mirror. At first, I didn't think much of it, but the car was getting closer, its lights growing brighter. I expected it to pass, but it stayed right behind us, tailgating aggressively. I felt a knot of unease in my stomach. The car behind us started to swerve, moving dangerously close to our bumper. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, trying to stay calm. I sped up, hoping to put some distance between us, but the car matched my speed. My heart began to race as I realized whoever was driving had no intention of letting us go. The highway was dark and empty, surrounded by dense trees. There was no one around to help. The car behind us pulled up beside us. The car swerved sharply towards us, trying to push us off the road. I jerked the wheel to the right, narrowly avoiding a collision. Sam woke up, startled by the sudden movement. He looked at me with wide eyes, fear etched across his face. I didn't have time to explain. I had to focus on keeping us on the road. The car was relentless, swerving back and forth, trying to force us into the ditch. I saw a curve in the road ahead and knew I had to use it to my advantage. I braced myself and waited for the right moment. As we approached the curve, the car made another attempt to ram us. I swerved sharply, causing the car to miss us by inches. The driver lost control, and I watched in horror as the car veered off the road, crashing through the trees and disappearing into the darkness. I slowed down, my heart pounding in my chest. I looked back, but there was no sign of the car. The highway was empty and silent once more. I pulled over to the side of the road, trying to catch my breath. Sam was shaking, and I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins. We sat there for a few minutes, too scared to move. I considered going back to check on the car, but the thought of facing whoever had been driving filled me with dread. I decided it was best to keep moving and get to our grandparents' house as quickly as possible.